I never really expected to find myself giving advice to people from graduating from an establishment of higher education. I never graduated from any such establishment. I never even started one. I escaped from school as soon as I could when the prospect of 4 more years of first learning was to come before I became the writer I wanted to be. I got into the world, I wrote, and I became a better writer the more I wrote, and I wrote some more, and nobody ever seemed to mind that I was making it up as I went along. They just read what I wrote, and they paid for it, or they didn't, and often they commissioned me to write something else for them, which I left me with a healthy respect for higher education that those of my friends and family who attended universities were cured of long ago. Looking back, I had a remarkable ride. I'm not sure you can call it a career because a career implies that I had some kind of career plan, and I never did. The nearest thing I had was a list I made when I was 15 of everything I wanted to do: to write an adult novel, a children's book, a comic, a movie, record an audiobook, write an episode of Doctor Who, and so on. I didn't have a career, I just did what was next on the list. So I thought I'd tell you everything I wish I knew starting out, a few things that, looking back on it, I suppose I didn't know, and that I would also give you the best piece of advice I'd ever got, which I completely failed to follow. But first of all, when you start out in the career in the arts, you have no idea what you're doing. This is great. People who know what they're doing know the rules and know what's possible and impossible. You do not, and you should not. The rules of what is possible and impossible in the arts were made by people who had not tested the bounds of the possible by going beyond them, and you can. And if you don't know it's impossible, it's easier to do, and because nobody's done it before, they haven't made up the rules to stop anyone from doing that again, yet. Secondly, if you have an idea what you want to make, what you were put here to do, then just go and do that. And that's much harder than it sounds, and sometimes, in the end, so much easier than you might have imagined. Because normally, there are things you have to do before you can get to the place you want to be. I wanted to write comics and novels and stories and films, so I became a journalist because the journalists are allowed to ask questions and to simply go out and find how the world works. Besides, to do those things, I need to write well, and I was being paid to learn how to write economically, crisply, sometimes under adverse conditions, and on time. Sometimes the way to become what you want to be will be clear cut, and sometimes it's almost impossible to decide whether or not you're doing the correct thing because you have to balance your goals and hopes with feeding yourself, paying debts, finding work, and settling for what you can get. Something that worked for me was imagining where I wanted to be, an author, primarily of fiction, making good books, making good comics, and supporting myself through my words was a mountain, a distant mountain, my goal. I knew that as long as I kept walking towards the mountain, I would be alright. And when I truly was not sure what to do, I could stop and think about whether it was taking me towards or away from the mountain. I said no to editorial jobs in magazines, proper jobs that would have paid proper money because I knew that, attractive though they were, for me they would have been walking away from the mountain. And if those jobs had come along earlier, I might have taken them because they still would have been closer to the mountain than I was at the time. I learned that by writing, I tended to do anything as long as it felt like an adventure, and to stop when it felt like work, which meant that life did not feel like work. Finally, when you start off, you have to deal with the problems of failure. You need to be thick-skinned to learn that not every project will survive. A freelance life, a life in the arts, is sometimes like putting messages in a bottle on a desert island and hoping that someone will find one of your bottles and open it and read it and put something in it and wash its way back to you. Appreciation or commission or money or love. And you have to accept that you may put out hundreds of things for every bottle that winds up coming back to you. So be wise, because the world needs more wisdom. And if you cannot be wise, pretend to be someone who is wise and just behave like they would. And now, go and make interesting mistakes, make amazing mistakes, make glorious and fantastic mistakes. Break the rules, leave the world more interesting for your being here. Make good art.